The sky was barely awake, but a woman was already running, barefoot, breathless, clutching a baby drenched in dirt and blood. From the mouth of a metal drum beside the trash heap, she had pulled the baby, still breathing, barely crying. A gateman saw her. He screamed, "She's doing it again! Somebody stop her!" Within seconds, people gathered. "This woman is mad!" That's the 5th baby she's stolen from the streets this year. Is she selling them or eating them? Who runs around picking babies like tomatoes? Stones flew, insults rained, but she kept running, faster than their judgment, louder than their curses. No one could catch her. No one could stop her. But no one asked why. Why does she do it? Why does this woman keep picking babies on the street? Who is she? This isn't just a story. It's a wound that never healed. A truth no one wants to hear. So brace yourself, because the tale of Mama Rebecca isn't just cruel, it's unforgettable. Subscribe, sit tight. The full story is about to break your heart, and maybe heal it too. The full story. The night was dead silent, even the moon refused to shine. In the corner of a filthy market street where broken stalls leaned like tired men and rats feasted on abandoned food, a woman stood, breathing fast, wild-eyed, her wrapper tied carelessly, her arms clutching something tightly wrapped in faded ankara. A baby, just born, not even a day old, no name, no blanket, no future. And then, with one wicked whisper to the wind, "I didn't ask for this thing," she let go. The bundle dropped with a sickening plop into the middle of the dunghill. The baby landed in filth, her tiny mouth gasping, her eyes barely open, her body sticky with birth and now coated in garbage. Used pads, rotten tomatoes, shattered glass, spoiled meat. Flies gathered, the air smelled like death. But the woman, she stood there, and she laughed. A chilling, cracked laugh that could curdle blood. She wasn't crying, she wasn't scared. She was relieved. "Let the pigs raise you," she spat. She turned. Her slippers slapped the ground as she vanished into the night like a demon finished with its work. No one saw her. No one stopped her. And the baby? The baby lay there, abandoned, helpless, a living child in a graveyard of waste. Morning broke. Sunlight stretched lazily across the sky. The market slowly came to life. Traders rolled out mats. Children swept the corners. A tomato seller came out to chase away goats chewing on her baskets. Then she heard it. A sound so faint it could have been the wind, a cry. A weak, broken cry from the centre of the dunghill. She paused, looked closer and screamed, "Jesus! There's a baby here!" Within minutes a crowd gathered. Women screamed, men shouted, children cried. Who did this? Which animal gave birth and dumped her child here? Wickedness! A kind woman wrapped the baby in her wrapper and rushed her to a nearby clinic. No name, no identity, so they named her Jessica. The kind woman is called Madame Rebecca, a woman with tired eyes but a warm heart. Barren, yes, but richer in compassion than most women with 10 children. She lived in a I face me, I face you compound. Just one room, one stove, one heart big enough for a village. No husband, no income, no inheritance. Yet within her home were 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, all rescued from heartbreak. Chuka, a boy she found picking spoilt bread from the gutter. Sandra, dumped on her doorstep with a note that read, "Raise her as yours." David, caught trying to steal Gary from the market just to eat. Amara, left by her mother on the church street with a plastic bag of torn baby clothes. Madame Rebecca had nothing. But she would always say, "I may not have food to feed you, but no child under my roof will ever sleep on the street. My shelter is free, love is free, and while breathe, so is safety." That morning, as she staggered into the compound carrying the blood-stained bundle from the dunghill, the other children ran out. Their eyes widened. She was holding another baby, another sibling, another mouth to feed. They didn't complain. They didn't cry. They didn't say why. Because they knew. When Mama Rebecca returns with a child, it means someone else has been saved. David dropped the broom and whispered, "Mama, is she ours now?" Madame Rebecca knelt carefully, holding the baby close. The newborn was barely breathing, her little fists clenched, her face streaked with the stain of garbage and tears. "Yes," she whispered. smiling sadly. She's ours now. Her name is Jessica, because even in this mess she still looks like a gift from God. The children circled the baby. Chuka wiped her tiny face with his old shirt. Sandra touched her soft hair and whispered, "Welcome, Jessica." Amara peeked at her and said, "She's so small, we'll have to protect her." They didn't see her as a burden. They saw her as family. That night they shared their only bowl of pap, 1 spoon each, saving the last sip for the baby. Madame Rebecca didn't eat. She just watched them and said with her usual laughter, "I may not have womb children, but look at my nation. The world threw you away, but me, I collect rejected things and turn them to royalty." Then she lifted Jessica, kissed her forehead and rocked her to sleep with a lullaby made of tears, prayers and strength. Years pass. Jessica grows, but so does poverty. But she wasn't alone in it. She had 4 siblings who weren't born of the same blood, but shared the same pain, the same roof, the same hunger, the same mother. Madame Rebecca, their queen in poverty, didn't have money. She didn't have food stored in bags. She didn't have fine wrappers or gold jewelry. But she had something stronger than all that. Love, shelter, unity. She would always say, "My womb didn't give me children, but my heart has never been barren." So every morning before the sun could yawn, Jessica, Chuka, Sandra, David and Amara were already awake, tying old wrappers, washing their faces with cold water from a leaking yellow jerry can, and getting ready to go out. Not to school, not to play, but to hustle. They hawked together, ground nuts, sachet water, pepper, tomatoes, matches, pure soap, even boiled eggs. They fetched water for bricklayers at nearby construction sites and got paid with coins. They carried bricks heavier than their arms, backs soaked in sweat, feet blistered from walking barefoot. They cleaned gutters, washed clothes, carried firewood, ran errands, not because they were forced, but because they understood. They knew that in Mama Rebecca's house, food wasn't a guarantee, but love was. So they worked hard, not just for themselves, but for each other. Evenings were magical. After a long, hot day under the sun, they'd all come home exhausted, but smiling. Mama Rebecca would already be back from the community school where she mopped the classrooms and cleaned the toilets. Sometimes she came home with leftover food from the school kitchen, tiny pieces of beans or jollof rice. And when she didn't, they would all sit around the small kerosene stove, boiling pap and laughing at nothing. Chuka would crack jokes. Amara would dance with her potbelly. Sandra would sing old songs from the radio. David would act like a pastor and preach fake sermons. Jessica, even though the youngest, would sit on Mama Rebecca's lap, smiling at them with the joy of someone who had nothing but felt full. And Mama Rebecca, she would throw her head back, laugh like a child, and say, "Look at me, oh, poor widow with 5 children she didn't carry in her womb. The devil is ashamed." They laughed together, worked together, prayed together, believed together, even when it rained and their roof leaked, even when mosquitoes feasted on their bodies at night, even when the neighbour mocked them with, "Is it orphans you're gathering to feed? Or beggars?" Mama Rebecca would just smile and whisper to the children, "Don't worry. These tears we cry today, one day they'll water our breakthrough." One fateful morning, the sun hadn't even risen, the cock hadn't crowed, but Jessica was already awake, crying. Not the kind of cry that comes from pain, not the kind that comes from being beaten or hungry. This one was different. It was deep, long, and painful. She sat on a low stool outside the room, her face buried in her knees and her shoulders shaking. Sandra came out first, rubbing her eyes. "Jessica, what is it? Did someone beat you in your dream?" Amara joined in, yawning. "Or is it hunger? Or did spirit flog you in your sleep?" Jessica didn't answer. She just cried harder. Soon the rest came out. Mama Rebecca tied her scarf, sat beside her, and gently lifted her chin. "Jessica, my love, talk to us. We're your family. Why are you crying after a long silence?" Through sniffles and shaking lips, Jessica whispered, "I want to go to school." Everyone froze. Even the air paused. "What did you say?" Mama Rebecca asked slowly. I didn't want to say it, Jessica mumbled. I didn't want to tell you. I don't want Mummy to be angry with me, but I just want to go to school. A heavy silence fell on them like rain on a tin roof. Then Amara exhaled loudly. Jessica, my dear, that's a bad dream. A very bad dream. School is not for people like us, Sandra added. We don't have that kind of privilege. Do you know how much it costs? David asked. Uniform, books, fees, pen, transportation. And let's be honest, Amara continued, her voice now almost sarcastic. School is for another species of human beings, not us. We were born for hustling, not handwriting. Everyone nodded. Everyone. Except Chuka. He said nothing. He just watched Jessica, watched her pain and swallowed his thoughts. Jessica didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just wiped her face and stood up quietly. But from that day on, Jessica was no longer the same. The laughter left her lips. The spark in her eyes dimmed. She started skipping meals. Even when David cracked his silly jokes, she barely smiled. Even when Amara danced her pot-belly dance, Jessica didn't join in. At night, she stared at the sky like it owed her answers. 4 days later, it was evening. They were all seated outside as usual, sharing stories, eating dry Gary with groundnut, letting the breeze console their bodies after a long day. Then Chuka, who had been quiet for days, suddenly sat upright. He looked directly at Jessica. You will go to school? Everyone stopped chewing. Even the cock nearby turned its head. What did you say? Amara asked, blinking. I said, Chuka repeated firmly, Jessica will go to school. I've made inquiries. She'll start with them in the next session. Gasps. Sandra dropped her cup. David looked at him like he had lost his mind. Mama Rebecca's voice trembled. Chuka, don't give her fake hope. You know we can't afford it. But Chuka shook his head slowly. Mama, you taught us to be positive. You taught us that even though the world rejected us, we should never give up. So why should we now? Everyone was silent again. And he continued, I already spoke to the principal at the community school. I told her Jessica can read and write a little from what we taught her at home. I told her she's brilliant. I begged. They agreed to admit her next session on one condition, that we support her with uniforms and food, and we pay her school fees installmentally. That's all. And I've made up my mind. I'll carry more bricks, I'll hawk longer, I'll work extra. But Jessica will go to school. Jessica's mouth fell open. Her eyes filled with tears. Mum Rebecca couldn't speak. She just hugged her tightly. The rest, their doubts melted. Their hearts, even if scared, began to believe. Because in that moment, a dream that seemed impossible became hope. And all it took was one brother who refused to give up. The new school session begins. The morning came, brighter than usual. The sky painted in soft orange, as though heaven itself was watching. Jessica stood outside the small room, dressed in her new uniform. Well, not new. It was an old one Chuka had begged from a neighbour's daughter who had just graduated. It was 3 sizes too big. The sleeves swallowed her wrists, the skirt touched her ankles, her socks didn't match, and her rubber sandals had been patched 3 times. But to Jessica, she felt like royalty, like a queen going to claim her throne. Her hair was neatly brushed. Amara did it with so much care. Sandra rubbed tiny Vaseline on her cheeks to make her glow. David cracked jokes to hide the lump in his throat. Mama Rebecca, she tied her best scarf, the yellow one with butterflies, and held Jessica's hand the whole walk to school. As they approached the school gate, Jessica looked around. Children in ironed uniforms, backpacks that sparkled, shiny shoes, expensive lunchboxes. She had none of that, but she had something greater, a family cheering her on. They all stood by the gate, barefoot, dressed in faded clothes, but with hearts bursting with pride. Jessica turned to them, her face lit up with a shy smile, and tears already welling in her eyes. She tried to be strong, but when she saw the tears rolling down Mama Rebecca's cheeks, she broke. Her lips trembled, but before she could say anything, they all spoke in one voice. Jessica, please, do it for us. Chuka, holding his cracked palm against his chest, Do it for every brick we carried. Sandra, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Do it for every time we sold pepper under the rain. David, swallowing hard. Do it for the days we slept without food, close quote. Amara, sobbing openly. Do it for Mama. Do it for this family. And Mama Rebecca, with shaking hands, she cupped Jessica's face and whispered, "This is the school I clean every day. But today it's welcoming my daughter, not with money, but with grace. Don't forget who you are, Jessica. Go and learn, my love. Go and fight for all of us." Jessica nodded slowly. Then she turned toward the school gate, heart racing, cheeks wet and legs shaking. Every step she took was heavy with dreams. She didn't have a backpack. She didn't have notebooks. But she had purpose. She stepped into that classroom, not as a poor girl, but as a warrior. And behind her at the gate, 5 people stood with tears, hope and love, sending their baby girl into a future none of them had ever touched, but prayed she would one day return from with victory in her hands. While Jessica sat in the classroom, learning, listening, trying hard to catch up on the years she missed, war was being fought behind the scenes, a war with no swords, only mops, bricks, blistered feet and empty stomachs. Mama Rebecca was the commander, her back already bent from years of scrubbing. But now she took on more work than ever. She cleaned not just the community school, but also the town clinic, the church compound, and even private compounds for people who barely paid her. She washed clothes until her fingers wrinkled, swept compounds from morning till dusk, fetched water for old neighbours who laughed behind her back. She day suffer for Pekin way no be her blood, that Jessica go still forget Anna when she hammer. School no day pay poor man. Wetin she want become president? But Mama Rebecca wiped her sweat and smiled. Even if I don't see the harvest, I'll still plant the seed. Meanwhile, the 4 children, they became Jessica's invisible pillars. David pushed a borrowed wheelbarrow at the market, hauling yams, firewood, crates of drinks, sometimes for hours without food, just to earn N300. Amara cleared bushy compounds with a rusty cutlass until her palms bled. She once collapsed under the sun and was rushed home, weak from hunger. Sandra hawked sachet water and cooked groundnut, chased by dogs, insulted by rich children, slapped by a woman who claimed she was blocking her shop. Chuka carried bricks twice his weight at a construction site, sometimes from morning till night. He once fell into a drainage while delivering cement. His toe broke, but the next morning, he limped to work again. They gave up play, gave up their own dreams. They shared a single pair of slippers. Some nights they came home coughing, other nights with wounds, but always with a smile for Jessica. And Jessica? She tried not to notice, but how could she not? She saw Chuka's limp. She saw Amara hiding her burnt palm. She saw Mama Rebecca using cloth as sanitary pads just to save money. She saw her lunch was always shared from the little they could scrape together. Her heart broke a little every time. So she studied harder. She always came first. She answered every question in class. She cleaned the chalkboard for her teachers, ran errands during break, and even tutored a girl in her class just to prove she was worthy. But life wasn't done testing them. One evening, Mama Rebecca collapsed right outside the clinic gate after her 3rd job of the day. They said it was exhaustion, high blood pressure, hunger, weakness. Jessica was called out of school. The whole family gathered at the clinic. The doctor shook his head. She needs rest. She's overworking herself. Her body is shutting down. Jessica held her mother's hand, crying. "Mummy, please, don't leave me. I'll drop out. I'll go and hawk. But Mama Rebecca opened her tired eyes and whispered, "No, don't you dare. Don't let this pain be wasted. You're going to finish this race. Promise me, Jessica." And Jessica nodded, sobbing. "I promise, Mummy. I promise." The struggles didn't stop. Rent was almost due, food was scarce, but they kept going because every test Jessica passed, every sentence she wrote, every well done from her teacher, felt like oxygen to the ones suffering behind the scenes. Years rolled by, and so did the pain, the hunger, the sweat-soaked shirts, and sleepless nights. Jessica didn't just pass, she conquered. She graduated with first-class honours in petroleum engineering from one of the top universities in the country. Her name made newspapers. Her story went viral. The girl found in the trash, now a national treasure. 3 international oil companies fought to employ her, offering mouth-watering salaries, cars, accommodations, even opportunities to relocate abroad. But Jessica didn't rush. She remembered her why. She remembered Amara's blisters, Chuka's broken toe, Sandra's burnt cheeks from cooking by roadside fires, David's cough from cold nights, and most of all, she remembered Mama Rebecca, now weak, coughing constantly, eyes pale, her strength fading. Jessica finally accepted an international oil firm offer. They flew her to the United Arab Emirates for 6-month elite training, and when she returned, she didn't come back the same. She came back a top official, driven in a black SUV with security, a team of aides, and a 6-figure salary. But the first thing she did was go straight to the Face Me, I Face You compound where it all began. The neighbours rushed out, jaws wide open. Jessica stepped out of the SUV in high heels, a power suit and sunglasses. But her heart? Still the same. She walked into the same room she once shared with 5 others, where they all once ate pap from one plate. Inside, her siblings sat beside a frail Mama Rebecca, feeding her slowly. Tears filled Jessica's eyes. "Mummy, I made it. We made it." She turned to the rest. "Pack your things. We're leaving this country, all of us." The silence was deafening. Amara blinked fast. Sandra's mouth dropped. David dropped his spoon. Chuka stood up slowly. "Wait, what did you say?" Jessica smiled, her eyes already red with emotion. "We are all flying to the United States. Mama needs treatment and I need my family with me. No more suffering," Amara screamed and fainted. David shouted, "Jesus!" You mean we'll enter plane? Aeroplane? Fly in the air with white people?" Sandra covered her mouth. "We will see Oyimbo? Eat with fork and knife?" Chuka simply knelt and broke into silent tears. Jessica hugged them all, then added, "But first, welcome to your new home. Welcome to your new home." They drove for 30 minutes, passing estates and tall gates. When the car stopped, they all stared at the mansion ahead. Tall, glassy, modern, marble floors, wide balconies, a swimming pool, a garden, a gym. Inside were uniformed house staff lined up and waiting. "Good evening, Miss Jessica." "Welcome, Ma." "Welcome, sir." They greeted her siblings and Mama Rebecca with bows. Chuka gasped. Amara screamed again. David touched the chandelier like it was heaven. Sandra ran to the bathroom and started crying. Mama Rebecca? She just sat quietly in a cushioned chair, eyes flooded, hands shaking. "God, is this what you were preparing all along? Me? A barren woman who gathered street children? You turned my shame into gold." Jessica knelt before her, held her frail hands and whispered, "You were never barren, Mama. You were just chosen to raise stars the world threw away." They cried, they laughed, they held each other in disbelief. No more sachet water, no more pushing barrows, no more insults. Just peace, rest, and finally, dignity. 2 years later, laughter echoed through the luxurious mansion nestled in a quiet estate in California. The once cracked voices that used to shout through the village street now rang out in foreign accents. The 5 children of Mama Rebecca were now men and women of influence. Chuka, once the silent dreamer, the boy who believed in Jessica's school dream, now owned a flourishing construction company with professional engineers working under him. His name was on billboards, his face on magazine covers. He had his own duplex with a fleet of cars and loyal workers. Amara, the loud realist, now ran a thriving import-export business. She travelled frequently between China and the US, her company name boldly inscribed on every cargo that left the ports. Her offices had staff in uniforms and her accounts made banks smile. David, the sharp boy with a fast mind, now owned a major logistics company in Africa. He had branches in 4 countries and was recently awarded Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Sandra, once mocked for her wild dreams, now had a global fashion brand. Her clothes had graced fashion weeks in Paris and New York. Her logo was known, her story inspiring. And Jessica, the fire starter, the one who cried for school, was now a renowned petroleum engineer, head of strategy in one of the top oil firms in the country. She walked with grace, commanding respect everywhere she stepped, but none of them forgot where they came from. Mama Rebecca, once weak and almost forgotten in poverty, now sat like a queen in the finest clothes money could buy. Her smile was now full, no longer forced through pain. Her health had returned, her laughter now endless. Then, one evening, in the family lounge that overlooked the city skyline, the 5 children called a meeting. Mama Rebecca walked in, her wrapper tied with elegance, her glasses resting on her nose. "My children hope no problem?" she asked, looking around the unusually serious faces. "Mama," Jessica began with a mischievous smile, "we've all agreed to do something unusual." "Yes, Mama," Chuka added. "We want to get married." Mama smiled, nodding. "That's good, my children. I have prayed for this day." Jessica stood. "We want to get married on the same day." Mama Rebecca blinked. "Eh?" Sandra giggled. "Yes, Mama, all 5 of us. Same day, same venue, one celebration, one grand occasion." Mama staggered to sit. "Ha! This is not wedding! This is festival! When did you people plan this? One wedding is headache enough, now 5. "Mama," David said, kneeling before her, "it's our way of celebrating you. We want the world to know our story. We want to make you proud in a way that can never be erased. You gave us yourself, your strength, your years. We want one day that is only about you." Tears slipped from Mama Rebecca's eyes. She covered her face and sobbed quietly. I suffered, but today this is more than a reward." Amara rushed to her, hugging her tightly. "Mama, we didn't forget. We all remember the hunger, the hawking, the mockery, and how you wiped our tears with your wrapper." Mama Rebecca smiled through her tears. "Let's do the wedding. Let the world hear our story. Let them know that God rewrote our shame." And just like that, the plan began. A wedding never seen before was coming. The Golden Gates of Elysian Arena, one of the most expensive event grounds in West Africa, were thrown open that morning. Rolls-Royce, Maybach, Bentleys, private choppers. The venue was a parade of royalty. Security was tight. Paparazzi filled the corners. News crews flew in from 5 continents. Because this was no ordinary wedding. It was one mother, 5 children, 5 couples, one story that brought the world to its knees. Mama Rebecca stepped out of her gold-trimmed SUV in a custom-designed royal orange lace, escorted by 10 young girls dressed in white, all holding her train. Her jelly was like a crown, and her glasses sparkled under the sun. The guests rose to their feet in respect. The MC raised the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just a wedding, this is history." And as music flowed through the air, the screen behind the altar lit up. Mama Rebecca, the woman who created her children from nothing. A voiceover began and tears flowed like rivers. 30 years ago, Mama Rebecca's husband died tragically in a car accident. He left no child behind and the world mocked her. They called her a barren widow, cursed and useless. Friends left, family avoided her, and at her lowest, she made a vow. "If God won't give me children from my womb, I'll find children with no one, and I'll raise them as mine." And so she began. The first child, Chuka. She found Chuka under a collapsed bridge in the middle of a storm. He was scavenging for food at just 8 years old, dirty, scared and angry. When she asked him his name, he said, "My name is Hunger. Leave me alone." "What of your parents?" "I was told I was found in the gutter," he responded. But she didn't leave. She carried him on her back for miles in the rain and made him her son. The second child, Amara. Amara was rescued from a garbage dump. She was abandoned, tied inside a rice bag. Mama Rebecca was passing by when she heard a faint cry. She thought it was a cat until she opened the bag. The child was barely breathing. The third child, David. David was stolen and trafficked at 5. His captors dumped him in a market after he fell sick. Nobody touched him because of the smell except Mama Rebecca. She found him when he was hungry and stole gari in the market. She wrapped him in her scarf, bathed him in a nearby stream and called him her son. She reported the case at the police station for weeks, but nobody came for him. The fourth child, Sandra. Sandra was found crying, dumped on her doorstep with a note that read, "Raise her as yours." Mama Rebecca saw her while returning from vigil and never looked back. The fifth child, Jessica. Jessica was the last. She was found in the dunghill early in the morning. Everyone fled from her, but Mama Rebecca saw something else. She saw a girl with the eyes of a dreamer. The camera panned to the 5 couples now walking down the aisle, hand in hand, tears in their eyes. Each one of them now rich, comfortable, and globally recognized. Each one of them wearing a smile their past could never have predicted. The MC continued the story and said, "They had nothing. Mama Rebecca couldn't send all 5 to school, but they all agreed to train just one. Jessica. They all hawked, they washed clothes. Chuka worked on sites, Amara sold ground nuts, David carried loads, Sandra polished shoes. They gave Jessica everything, and Jessica carried them all on her back. Her success opened doors. She returned and built a house for Mama. She got Chuka into construction school. Amara started her mini import business. David launched his logistics hustle. Sandra learned design from Jessica's friend in the city. Together, they rose. Together, they became giants." At the altar, Jessica held the mic, looked at her husband lovingly, then turned to the crowd. Her voice broke. "People say blood is thicker than water, but I say love is thicker than blood. We were not born of the same womb, but we are stronger than most families tied by blood." She looked at Mama Rebecca, who was already weeping in the front row, her hands clasped together. "Mama, you created kings and queens with your pain. You gave 5 strangers the right to call you mother, and today the whole world celebrates you." The 5 couples knelt before Mama Rebecca. "Thank you for the beatings. Thank you for the prayers. Thank you for the tears. Thank you for the sacrifices. This wedding is your reward." Mama Rebecca sobbed uncontrollably, clutching all their hands at once. "I was barren, but God gave me children from the dust. Today, the shame of yesterday has become the glory of today." And as vows were exchanged and rings slipped onto fingers, the heavens seemed to smile. Birds flew above, fireworks exploded, and the crowd roared. This was no ordinary wedding. This was a resurrection. This was the reward of a broken woman who turned her scars into stars.
A year later.
After her 5 children were joyfully married in a once-in-a-lifetime ceremony that moved the nation to tears, Mama Rebecca found herself lying awake one night, thinking of the many children still left behind. Children abandoned in rivers, in gutters, on dirty dunghills like forgotten trash. Babies like the ones she once picked up and raised as her own. That night, she whispered to herself with tears in her eyes, "God, if you help me raise 5 discarded souls, then I will spend the rest of my life helping others do the same." And so the Rebecca Haven Foundation was born, a safe place for orphans, abandoned babies, homeless children, and teenage mothers, with warm beds, food, clothes, free education, and love. But she didn't stop there. Mama Rebecca became the face of a massive campaign. If you're not ready to raise a child, don't bring one into this world. She toured schools, universities, markets, and rural villages. With a firm yet loving voice, she looked into the eyes of young girls and trembling teenage boys and said, "A child is not a mistake. A child is a calling. Don't throw that baby away. Bring them to me. Let love raise them." News outlets picked up her story. Then local governors, then international organizations, then the president of the nation. Soon she was invited to speak in the US, Canada, Kenya, South Africa, and Dubai. People were stunned to learn that this woman, now speaking in global summits, once fetched water for 50 naira, swept compounds, and lived in a mud house. But what touched the world most was her story of 5 abandoned children whom she raised in poverty, and how they came together to send one girl to school. And in return, that girl changed all their lives. Her speech at the Global Child Welfare Conference ended with a long, heartfelt standing ovation. She looked at the crowd and said, "Every child deserves love. If you can't raise a child, don't create one. If you see a child without help, be their help. Let my story be proof that even from the trash, God can still raise treasure." Mama Rebecca, the mother of the forgotten, became a global symbol of love, hope, and second chances. And in her mansion, on her birthday, her children knelt before her saying, "You picked us from nothing. Today, the world kneels to your strength. Thank you, Mama." Now, hello, besties. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a comment below. Thank you, Mama Rebecca, or share your own message of love. And remember, no child deserves to be thrown away. Let's raise a generation of love. See you in my next video. Bye for now.